Welcome, everyone, to a truly fascinating explainer where we're going to decode the magnificent palaces of Anatolia. These weren't just big houses or extravagant residences, they were actually stone reflections of an empire's soul and its constantly shifting ideologies. Because just like the towering corporate high rises or government buildings we see today, this architecture was designed to make you feel a very specific way. So today, we're going to walk through centuries of history, exploring how architecture acted as a literal physical manifestation of power, belief, and profound cultural transformation. Let's get into it.
Okay, so to really understand this, we have to recognize that when we look at these monumental structures, we aren't just looking at piles of bricks, marble, and wood. We are actually reading the historical, cultural, and political DNA of the societies that built them. Every single courtyard, every closed door, and every sprawling garden was intentionally designed to reflect exactly how the rulers viewed themselves, how they managed their subjects, and how they adapted to a rapidly changing world. To grasp this incredible 600-year evolution, here is our roadmap. We'll start with the secret language of palace architecture, then explore the mythological palaces of the Seljuks, move to the classical Ottoman age at Topkapi, look at the synthesis of the East at Ishak Pasha, head over to the Bosphorus palaces of the Westernization period, and finally wrap up with our cultural heritage.
Section 1. The secret language of palace architecture, decoding the meaning of spaces. Now, before we actually explore the palaces themselves, we absolutely have to understand the foundational vocabulary that dictated imperial life. The layout of these buildings was never accidental. It was a strict spatial hierarchy. The first crucial concept we need to know is the harem, which represents the ultimate private sphere. The word literally means forbidden or sacred, so this was a space completely closed off and fiercely protected from the outside world. It wasn't just a domestic living space. It was a highly organized, secure institution where the sovereign and his family lived, totally insulated from public eyes. Right on the flip side, in stark contrast to the harem, we have the Selamlik. This was the exact opposite. This area served as the official and public stage for state affairs, administration, and male social interaction. As we'll see in later palace designs, this strict separation, the haremlik-Selamlik layout, basically becomes a defining rule of the architectural game. And honestly, this spatial setup brilliantly illustrates the functional divide of the state itself. On one hand, you have the Enderan acting as the inner elite academy. This was the beating, intellectual heart, where the future leaders, civil servants, and military bureaucrats were actually raised and educated. And that is directly balanced by the Buren, which handled the outer practical services, the external administration, and the physical guarding of the palace. Basically, you can think of it as inner mind versus outer muscle. Historically, this spatial language evolves dramatically. We're going to trace a journey that starts way back in the 1220s with the Seljuks, hits a defining Ottoman turning point in 1465, explores a fascinating 17th century marvel in 1685, and finally shows how the 19th century completely rewrote the rules of design by 1856. Section 2. Mythological palaces of the Seljuks. Walls woven with legends. Our first major stop takes us back to the mystical era of the Anatolian Seljuks. Back then, palaces were deeply intertwined with ancient mythology, nature, and the sheer ruggedness of the landscape. For example, consider the Kubadabad Palace, built in the 1220s right on the shores of Lake Bashir. Its tiles show an incredible fusion of Central Asian shamanism merging with Islamic art. You don't just see geometric patterns. You see the double-headed eagle projecting total dominance, the mythical phoenix, and the tree of life. The walls literally spoke to you through legends.
Section 3. The Classical Ottoman Age at Topkapi, a 400-year imperial center.
Jumping forward to 1465, following the conquest of Istanbul, the dynamic completely shifts. We enter the classical Ottoman era with the monumental powerhouse built by Fatih Sultan Mehmet, Topkapi Palace. Now, Topkapi isn't a single block. It's a deeply decentralized flow of 4 distinct courtyards. Notice how each gate acts as a psychological filter. From the Baba Humayun, where the public could enter, you pass through the Babu Salam into the administrative heart. But that third gate, the Babu Sa'ada, or Gate of Felicity, that is the threshold of absolute authority. It physically pulls you deeper into the exclusive heart of the empire where the Sultan resided and the sacred relics were kept. The really defining characteristic of Topkapi, though, was how it completely rejected the monolithic, imposing Western style.
Topkapi didn't need to be one giant, intimidating building. Instead, it was this sprawling, nature-integrated layout, almost like a grand, permanent stone encampment that housed the operations of a massive empire for 4 solid centuries.
Section 4. Synthesis of the East at Ishak Pasha, a fairy tale castle.
Now we're going to take a detour to eastern Anatolia in 1685, tucked away in Dobrubayzit. Ishak Pasha Palace beautifully blends Seljuk, Ottoman, and Persian styles together with highly ornate Baroque and Rococo stone masonry. It's an absolute visual feast of cultural cross-pollination sitting right on the historical Silk Road. And beautifully, all of this is located in the exact same inspiring, rugged literary geography that sparked the famous Kurdish epic Mem-Uzin by Ahmed Zihani. But get this, what is truly astonishing about Ishak Pasha is a world first hiding right beneath the surface. It holds the title for the absolute first central heating system in a palace anywhere in the world. Beneath this ancient-looking stone castle is a brilliant network of channels that circulated hot water to warm the rooms. It is a true marvel of engineering hiding in plain sight. Section 5. Bosphorus Palaces of the Westernization Period, Aesthetic and Ideological Transformation. Diving right into the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire undergoes its most dramatic aesthetic and ideological pivot, directly on the shores of the Bosphorus in Istanbul. The empire was changing, and the architecture had to broadcast that change to the world. The shift is undeniable. We move away from Topkapi's organic, secretive courtyards to Dolmabahce's massive, single-block Western exterior. It was explicitly designed to look like the grand palaces of Europe, to signal modernization. Though, interestingly enough, if you look at the floor plan, Dolmabahce still secretly hides the traditional haremlik-salamlik layout on the inside. It's essentially a European suit tailored over a traditional Turkish soul. During this chaotic era of rapid construction along the water, distinct marvels began to appear. You have Dolmabahce's breathtaking crystal staircases commissioned by Sultan Abdülmecid. Then there's Beylerbeyi's fascinating sea and ship-themed ceilings ordered by the naval-obsessed Sultan Abdulaziz, as well as Trajan's stunning Moorish columns showcasing a really unique Orientalist blend. And each of these Bosphorus palaces carries immense historical drama. For instance, Beylerbeyi was a luxurious summer stay for foreign royalty like France's Empress Eugenie, but it also became the gilded cage where Sultan Abdülhamid spent his final years under house arrest. Chiron tragically burned down in 1910, standing as a ruined ghost for decades before its modern restoration. And Yıldız Palace is fascinating because it was actually a retreat back to the old Topkapi style, a dispersed park layout offering extreme privacy, which even housed the personal carpentry shop and private theater of Sultan Abdülhamid II.
Of course, as we talk about this era, we must highlight that Dolmabahce holds a unique, irreplaceable spiritual value for the modern Republic of Turkey. It transitioned from an imperial center to a presidential one, and it is the very place where the founder of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, spent his final days and passed away. The clock in that room famously remains stopped at exactly 9:05.
Section 6. Our cultural heritage, structures extending from history to the future. Today, these structures have transitioned from closed centers of absolute power into our shared cultural heritage. They belong to the public, acting as profound educational spaces. But their fates also remind us of the fragility and endurance of history. While some, like the old Edirne Palace, were tragically lost to war, literally blown up in 1878, others, like Topkapi, have evolved into globally celebrated UNESCO World Heritage Sites, preserving the relics of human history. Meanwhile, the Bosphorus palaces stand beautifully on the water, as the very last surviving monuments of an empire navigating the complex pains of westernization and cultural synthesis. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As we look back at these magnificent halls that synthesize East, West, myth, and modernity, we really have to ask ourselves, what lessons from this history carved in stone will we carry into the future? Because architecture is never just a building. It is a mirror of society itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking closely at the walls around you.